The following clip is exclusive content from the university. Access over 300 videos and 26 courses with advanced metaphysics on demand. Jump in live chats with Savan and the rest of the tribe. New materials are available monthly along with guides and regimens. Subscribe today and save $25 off your first month membership. Links are in the descriptions. Subscribe to Secret Energy TV or this channel for future show notifications. Wholeness. Wow, tribe, we on tonight is happening, and there's a lot that I have to transmit in this conversation today. This build, this connection is not even just a conversation. This is as real as it gets. I definitely wanted to take the moment to let it breathe. There's about 40 of us in the room right now. We're going to take a moment and go ahead and share that love and get the cosmic go round happening, so that way we can make sure that this is transmitted through all of the organic nodes of creation. So you know how we do it. Let us know where you're at. I'm Seven Bomar. I'm right now in Costa Rica, and that's part of me. The other part is deeply in the hyperspace, and I'm just saying wholeness to the tribe. Thank you for being here. It's a special night. Let's hear it. I wanted to say wholeness, tribe. It's great to be here with you. This is... You know, we keep bringing that magnum opus right now. That's Hydrolux, but that magnum opus continues, and it doesn't look like it's trying to let up. Meaning that sometimes I do be trying to like maybe change direction, maybe take a break or something. Not this life. This is about full power, total awareness, pure connection, and that's what the higher selves intend to bring to all of us. Now, the first thing is for real tonight, because this is occultism tonight. So two things need to happen. One, Palo Santo and sage. If you have it and you was just like, you know, we good. The house smells good. And you were good on that. Tonight is where you're really going to want to have that. And also you're clearing space for others who don't have it at all. It may be your first night. You thought it's not important, whatever. But it's good to clear the space. And I'm going to explain that right off why. From a situation that I have experienced, because I'm not allowed to just talk about these things. I have to go through the experience also. So sometimes I never know what is cooked up for me. I just know it should be interesting, and it'll be better than continuously being repetitive, continuously staying stagnant, being in, as we say, the course, the loops, the circles, the curses, etc. It's better than that, but it's always a surprise. And as I keep saying, as we're growing more, it's just like when a child has to learn everything they don't know, imagine how that could impact them if you just keep telling them what they don't know and what they don't know, right? Like there has to be a moment where it's like they feel like they've learned something, and then you come in with another course. So for me, this entire tutelage has been like that. I'm constantly being taught again by the higher self what is to come next, and what did I do and how did I do? Meaning I get my personal, as you get your personal tests scored all the time to let you understand where you're going. Tonight is going to take the greatest maturity. So obviously the Palo Santo and the sage is the first wave. The second wave is it is not children's night. Oftentimes Tribe Vibes is pretty much PG-13. Tonight is not that night. It's an adept level conversation. So that means that if you have your children around and the mic's open, you either have the option to put some headphones in and keep going with it, or I will ask you just to, in respect, to discontinue the call today and catch the archive, because the things that we're talking about today are for adepts, adults, elders. This is, again, why, you know, if you still had grandma hanging around, you was trying to talk around grandma would snap and like, psh, don't ever talk when I'm talking. You know, imagine you're in a sacred ceremony and the big deal is there doing the honoring, and you're just over there talking to your friends about, I don't know, Mario Kart and your score on Mario Kart. The elders are just like, what is going on? You're violating the space because there's a hierarchy in the space, right? Like generally who's speaking should be the most learned, because we want to gain that knowledge so that we can accelerate to that level. So word to the wise right now is that, you know, this is not the user-friendly children's conversation. Also, it's going to take your maturity, which should be happening at this point. We're all in resonance. So what that means is that I'm confident that at least 80 to 90% of those that are joining into this space today have gone through themselves several of their own filters. Our organs are our filters. And in that process, they've arrived at this resonance and frequency. It doesn't tend to attract people who are not on that level or in that harmonic. That is not to say that once this is done today, there may be a few unsubscribes. It's just the natural nature of the thing. I realize that, in fact, because we do things here in this space, we talk about many different things, you're going to have a tendency to see people leave more than you would actually see them come. And that's because when people come here, we get to know them, we see their face, and then when they start missing, we know, okay, something happened, they're gone. And sometimes we reach out to them, depending on, how long it's been, and we see if we can offer any kind of assistance or if they just need a break from it. But what I'm saying is that because we're talking on this and we're talking in private, I get a chance to look forward to those unsubscriptions after the build of who just couldn't take that. And if I go out into the public, if I go to YouTube, I bring a message like this, of course, we tracked people who are interested in that type of resonance and that kind of build because they're in that space in their life. Now, this space is, to me, the final space. It's when you finally are ready to really, really answer the big questions and actually get some results. You're ready to, that truth that they're saying that people can't handle, you're ready to hear it. And also, you've been working on yourself, and you do see that you need a little bit more help as far as the things you need to know and what you need to be aware of to really quell the monkey mind, get the meditations going properly, and be able to zen out, especially when you need to, so that way you can activate this power that you already know exists there. So this is the whole process of doing that on a continuous basis, because that's the other interesting thing about this machination that we're in, is it changes. So you could have had thought everything was cool today with you and you got all balanced, and now you were the high being, and this thing will shift like a moon cycle, and a different energy will come through, and now here comes the next challenge or lesson for you to be flexible, as we call it, strong and flexible. Now, these energies that I'm talking about today and what I'm presenting is very real. It's real to the point that if you understand it, it brings you to a certain level of mastery. But if you don't understand it, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And I've had to talk about this a couple times, because now there's a kind of a floaty state of consciousness where basically a person feels like if they don't think about something, then it doesn't exist. As long as they don't focus on what's going on around them, then it doesn't exist. But, you can hit the next corner, and if you didn't think that, they were doing some contact tracings or whatever, and you just thought it was going to be gravy, you may find yourself getting out of the car or having to deal with a situation that you thought didn't exist. So it doesn't assist us at all to not be aware of what's going on in our space, as we discussed in our last build. But understanding how to balance that properly is key. It's something that you're going to literally have to do. It's not something that you're going to take for granted. You're going to be able to take for granted. And I learned that, if you want to say the hard way, this week. Actually, last week. Beginning somewhere around last week. I don't really count days as much, but it was towards the end of last week. And this is because there are some maxims and there's some principles here to this mastery of occultism. And it's really hinges a lot on balance. And we always talk about that, but we got to get a little bit deeper today to talk about what are we really balancing, and why is the whole world having so much trouble in its balancing act, especially dealing with spirits and also dealing with their own flesh. And this is because as we just came onto this ascension, it's clear that everything that starts going up gets lighter and lighter. I mean, this is proven in all forms of art, all schools of mechanics, theory, engineering, etc. We got argon gas, we have helium, we have things that are so small and light up on the top. So it's logic then that the things that are on the bottom and the things that are below, they just get progressively more and more heavier. Okay? So when we say we're going to ascend, this is why people compare or connect ascension to light, because this word Light happens to be also the word Lite, meaning to actually not have weight. So as you're ascending, you're getting lighter and lighter. And since we were on this ascension, and we really did an ascension, it wasn't just like a course or a class or a Udemy or something like that. We was like on the ascension. I personally wasn't very mindful about that I was light. So trying to handle weight at that point could be an issue, okay? And it's just the lessons that you're going to have to learn, because when you're light, which is also seen as fragile like a feather, can a feather hold up a brick? What does a brick do to a feather? It breaks it, right? Like it crumbles it. So it's just a rule of thumb here. Like, we haven't even got into occultism yet, that if you ascend, the last thing you really want to do is start getting heavy again really fast. In fact, it seems like it's even the nature of those that have ascended, which I found out some of them are called the Alites, right? It's their nature not to be concerned about anything going on in these spaces. It's almost like a total meditation. That when they get there, they purposefully forget about all of this and how all of this works, because it's literally heavy. Our whole thing with gravity, our whole thing with entropy, why the planet is on this wobble, right? That is all about how heavy things are, because this is the place that there's some heavy stuff here. Now, you can also say that for the energies and the things that come across and the things that go on. You'd be like, man, that's some heavy stuff that you're telling me right now. You see what I mean? So there's a lot to do with weight and where you're at. So I for sure believe that once I jumped back into carrying the weight of the world, since I did the address to the world, or as I call it, what I'm saying is that to assess the external frequency of the world address. That's what I did last week. And when I get into stuff, y'all know I get in, I go all the way in. But I went in with the Lightbody. And while I didn't think it would cause any situations, somewhere around, I think it was last Saturday, Friday, whatever, I got up like a normal morning, went into the kitchen, grabbed this pot of oatmeal that was actually from like yesterday or whatever to see if it was still good. And I turned like this and my whole back cut out. And so much that I just hit the floor. It wasn't even like I could hold myself or anything. The pain was excruciating. Never experienced anything like this in my life. Never had anything like this happen. Like I don't have a history of back problems, right? So I'm laying there on the floor, right? Of course, dealing with this pain, wondering, okay, well, what's up? What's up? And to fast forward through this, through a series of events, I can tell you I would not know what I know now if that didn't happen. I had plans. Like, I'm working on LMS. I got folks, I got a lot of stuff going on. Like, I'm really over here with 9 arms, forget 8, doing different things, making it all work. I refuse to give up on it. And because of this, I got a real opportunity to sit down for a moment and to just get to the things that I can only really compare to what, as programmers, let's say computer programmers, we call technical debt, okay? Technical debt is that when you make a fix to something, let's say a website, right, and you apply a fix, you can fix it where you only do a few lines of code and it's like a temporary fix. Really, you need to put about 2 or 3 hours in of code to really fix the situation, but stuff's critical, the site can't go down, so you do this quick fix. So technical debt is, if there was still where the developer needed 3 hours to do that, you're now basically 3 hours worth of debt in the hole. Now imagine this keeps going on. There's different parts of the website. There's all these different quick fixes. The technical debt rises. Now the reason why I bring it up this way is that until you say to the developers, look, hey, we're not going to develop any new things, go ahead and start processing the technical debt.
they will try to keep building quick fixes until one day it'll all come down at a certain point, and it's not good. It's not pretty. Okay? So imagine in your life then, if there's these things, it could have been this book, it could have been this crystal thing you were supposed to make, it could have been something, and you thought about, well, why am I making that anyway? Or why would I do that anyway? What am I trying to get from that? Why am I engaging in that? You can say, well, I need to heal myself. And then you may do something like, you know what? Instead of building that crystal device that I'm been conceiving, I'm gonna just take this supplement. And that's like the technical debt thing, because while you were told to build the crystal device and you knew it was going to take you some time, it was going to take you some energy, you just never built it. You use other things to kind of fill in what you thought what you conceived the crystal device would do, because it was quicker, and then you just never got back around to it until one point where it stacked up too high, and then boom. So it was clear to me by like the third day that I was dealing with that kind of situation. I had things that were still pending that higher self was like, you need to get to this. And the interesting part was, I think they were actually telling me before I went on the ascent. Like, yo, you forgot your helmet and your mask, and he's gone. He's not going to be able to breathe when he gets up there. It's like I've done this before in life. I've gotten so excited about something that I just omitted the instructions and went and just totally blew up some stuff and was like, oh man, now I got to wait 2 weeks for them to send new parts. So this happens. And it happened to me in such a unique way that I come to realize for sure that, remember, out of all of your 33, right, which are symbolic to even spirits, right, all those 33 parts of your spine, if one of them does not want to do something, all of them are going to give up. All of them are not going to be able to hold the weight of even what the smallest one could balance. And this should bring us into a deeper insight about why we work with balance, why there are different forces, and why we're learning to communicate with those forces. So when they're telling us, because a week ago, when I went to this holistic chiropractor guy, which was super awesome, and he definitely let me know that things were definitely not as bad, and that, as I'm feeling the recovery, I'm here talking right now, that things are going to get better. It was just like, it was these moments where I was just like, there was so much that was happening, and I got a chance to analyze so many things. It just brought me to this grand understanding of how much, like I said, balance is important, and how important it is for us to begin to assess the world that we're actually in and what's happening in this world. And when I got an opportunity to do that, I was let into why it's not an issue also to descend and then ascend again. Because I went so deep, it was almost akin to me almost falling off the ladder. I thought about naming this, I fell off the ladder of lights. Here's what I saw. Because I felt like even when I fell, that I only felt like, let's say you start coming down a ladder, but you're still in the fourth or third step, and I fell from there. So when I was there, I wasn't completely injured, but I was in a situation enough to know, hey, you just fell off a ladder. And then something was like, but yeah, we just ascended. And then I was like, well, but why would I fall? And it was like, because you took on too much weight. And then there's this denial process, like, too much weight for me? And then there's the God bleeds moment. Like, yeah, too much weight for you, because if you can't keep these elements in balance, even the conversation you were having the other day, you were so serious about it, but you neglected to see exactly the state that you were in. So when you took on all that weight, this part of you broke under that weight. Now, I'm preluding this conversation we're going to have today with this example, by the way. This is just an example to explain. This is a real deal that if you don't understand now, sometimes when I get into something, I have a tendency to, I don't think I over-simulate, but I simulate the situation so I can get a real idea of what's going on. The reason why I say I don't over-simulate is because, let's say if I'm talking about World War II, me over-simulating World War II doesn't help me. But for me to be a fly on the wall in Hitler's bunker to understand what was going on when he was signing the armistice, it's a whole different level of feeling and energy that I can tap into by being there. I'm just explaining to you that the only way really you can gather knowledge is to be there. They call that experience. But it just so happens that you can actually be anywhere if you took it serious enough. Now, of course, people don't generally take things really serious. They hear stuff and then it kind of glides right out of the brain and then comprehend again. If people took serious what they were hearing and what people were saying to them, they would be acting totally different. Like if you knew it was flesh-eating virus and all this stuff that they talk about, if we really believed that stuff, we would be totally different. We back there vigilant with suits on and masks on and, you know what I mean, our own clique and people and money and all sorts of stuff. You know, we got chickens and all sorts of, we took this serious, what they were saying about the world. So you can tell that there's still a element of fictitiousness going on in most consciousness because they can read or hear about something, but still not really adapt to what they need to be like because they heard that information or connected to that information. So what that means is that we actually have the ability to make something that is very heavy light, right? Like just kind of like somebody like, oh man, they blowing everybody up. All right, well, shoot, man, it's not me. You see what I mean? Just totally take what is being actually done that you can prove and actually make it mean nothing to you, right? So, but then there's this other person that's like, what, they blowing up for, man, we got to stop this. And they start taking that. That's kind of where I'm at. So because I got to believe that that's happening in order for me to react like a real being to what I need to do about that. Versus, like I said, I think that once they start turning these computers on a while ago, they turn human beings to androids. And that the true definition of an android is a humanoid that has been made robotic, right? It's like the fine blend between the computers that we're looking at, we're dealing with right now and the robots, right? Which can't still do things on their own, and then AI, right? So it's like the fine blend between those two, something that can think on its own, but still moves very robotic. So it tells itself something's going on, and then it just starts, calculating what it may do about it. And then if it's enough programming happening to make the being nullify any situation, which is basically TV, because the arm will come off every 15 minutes in some movies. They maximize the level of gore. So a person even looking at a movie, as we mentioned, has to put themselves into the movie in order for it to be a good movie. So immersion is anyone who knows how to write good movies is capable of sinking a person into complete immersion, almost like a trance. And in that period of immersion, they believe what's going on is real if the movie writer can do it good enough, according to them, right? That's good for them. But again, because that's not real, once they leave the movie theater, it's like getting off of a drug. In fact, that drug is dopamine. And you're just like, all right, well, that was a good one. Well, they had the music, they had everything, but it's not real. So then when you look then at the TV, which is on the news, you may see the exact same thing going on, but of course it's got no CGI. It's got no pyrotechnics, and it don't have one of them J.J. Abrams tracks behind it. So you're just like, you're already oversensitized. So those kind of things like, oh, shit, well, you can watch a page after page of World Star Hip Hop and not feel like the world is descending into chaos. You're just like, yo, I'm good. That was funny, and go somewhere else. So what I'm saying is, just to be very clear, is that we have the ability to make heavy matters light. But in that, we sacrifice our empathy. Does that click? Does that make sense? So now you can see why there are light beings running around, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're light in the way that you think that they're good, because somehow then good became light. It's just that they don't care about anything. So because of that, they ride high on their frequencies, and they seldom get weighed down by other stuff. Okay? Which also produces a level of detachment, right? So we need to understand these powers, because neither one of these are good or bad if you're looking for the safe zone. It's just to understand what's going on around you and how you're guiding this thing, okay? So let's keep going. So there's this saying then. It's what goes up Does anybody want to finish that in the chat for me, just so I understand I'm on the same planet where the same words are used, because in case I got to dip up out of here because I didn't crack through the ozone layer. They say what goes up must come down. Okay, so for me in my world, I feel like what goes up stays up, right? And that's immature. So what I got a chance to learn was that there's a lesson when you're coming down also that's equally as powerful as you're coming up, because behold, we saw the ladder coming up and down, and those who can take it down and up and down, those are the ones that escape death. Those are the ones that are able to bring themselves back to life again. That is the Thoth. That is the thrice born. That is the Hermes. Even today, I'm going to show you, Hermes is now Abraham. Hermes is also Enoch. All of the text is already replete, explains this. And where we're at is we're living in this world where it is really true. The master knowledge is here, period. But the amount of distraction is so high, it is possible not to even know and not to even believe that it is around. And you're going to know that today. So let's keep going. So we need to address, before we get into this stuff, right? This deep stuff, because it's going to empower us. But we need to know that stress or weight is a silent killer. Okay? Stress is a silent killer. We don't see, like I didn't see how it was deteriorating what I had going on with my spine, because I was taking it too serious. It was silent until I was on the floor. So this still harkens back to every single one of us, for us to remember, especially right now, that not being mindful of how you're processing your journey and others around you. If you're doing it in what could be called a distorted way, I don't want to use the term negative, but if it's done in a distorted way, it could be very detrimental to your health. It is. So if anybody on here today, if you're dealing with stress, by a show of hands, if you're stressed out about anything, remember what I'm saying today. You need to learn how to make that stress light. You need to go and do things at times to get that stress off you and relieve that stress. Do not live with that stress, because that stress is killing you, but it's doing it silently. It's one of the only things, like we hear it all the time. Now, it's just a matter of weight. That's why they call it the stresses. The stresses and the tresses are the parts that are on the bridge that allow it to bend. And for sure, in order to go up and down the ladder, you got to be able to bend. That's what it is to be flexible. Okay? But you can't break. If you break, you get broke. It's just a process. You'll have to climb, put yourself back together. The whole process will have to happen. So again, just be mindful of the knowledge you're hearing. I cannot omit the power. I cannot not keep going. I have to say that right. I cannot not keep going. Whatever I've initiated and engaged, it's pulling me to it. So it's no longer of my own thrust, my own steam that I'm going into enlightenment, if you may. So every day I get a chance to wake up to a lesson. And then, as I said to everybody, what I do is I come forward and I open my diary to you. Through my voice, I tell you what I'm experiencing in real time and what's going on. And based on all that I know and all that I've experienced, these thousands of works that are like one after another. Today, I'm going to go through a book that is like, wow, there's even books like this. And the book's free. It's sitting on archive.org, like I said to everybody else. And I've been telling everybody for 10 years. The Gutenberg Project had to scan in these books because the books were disintegrating, because the paper that they were on from this time period, 70 years, 60 years, the paper starts to disintegrate. So they can't lose that. That's like having the Library of Alexandria, but nobody wants to pay for it. Because in the bigger libraries, let's say the initiated libraries, they got all their books. All that stuff is already archived. JSTOR is holding most of that. But for the populace, it's Gutenberg. And because nobody wants to really read, all this work in Troll Gutenberg, because not all the books are about spirituality. Sometimes you would miss that the book that explained what was going on in the whole world would just be sitting there in a digital file and almost be meaningless until somebody like me gets a transmission and finds through a series of events this book and then unearth it again. And it'll be synchronistically tied right in, just to show it's not like I got libraries of 6,000, 7,000 books that I haven't read. I have JSTOR's archives because the internet's own kid downloaded the whole archive before he killed himself, as I explained to everybody. So it doesn't mean I can just go in there and this is infinite knowledge almost. You don't have enough time in your life to go through all this knowledge. So something has to show you specifically this, right? So I got a series of that event happening as I was, again, digesting and going through the process of getting rid of my technical debt. So a few more things here before we begin. No, we have not got started yet. What we're doing here, so now are we clear on this stress thing? Now, of course, it's not as easy as me saying it. Of course, like, oh, yeah, I'm not stressed anymore, 7. It's not that easy, right? But don't play the game. If you're stressed, you're already dying. This is the number one way they're getting us. The fear and the stress. And what you got to do is generally, it's because it always lingers, right? It's a character flaw, really. But it'll be somebody or to be concentrated in something. It's time to disempower that. Okay, just know that you get the message right now. If you've been dealing with something and it's stressing you out and you've been dealing with it for a while, just being tolerant, I'm telling you on the real galactic scale, time clock light system, you got to get ready to make it a wrap, period. Right? So that's the last thing on that. Now, what are we doing here when, let's say scientifically, if we're trying to regenerate, which we're going to be talking about just for a little bit here. If we're trying to regenerate, literally turn the clock back. The only thing that's actually turning the clock forward is stress and fear. Okay? Just so you can understand. If you never have processed stress and fear, you will look like a baby still. Okay? But it hits you even silently. Other people's stress and fear be on you sometime. In fact, most of the time it is somebody else's. Somebody then told you something and now stress and fear is in your life too. Especially when they cuss you out. They just told you something and now stress is all on you. You see what I mean? So this is not as complicated, or it's not the way in which it's administered is not as complicated as the amount of power in which it elicits. So again, we would think something like this is very petty to the big thing. But as you're going to hear and see in a moment, it becomes the wedge for especially the distorted side of the big thing to be able to affect and impact your frequency. Okay? So it's just very important that we understand that that silent killer is basically every time we start perceiving what we want, this synapse sends these electrical circuits into the consciousness. It's that electrical side, that L side of the consciousness that starts sending the projections and the pictures, okay, into your consciousness. Now, as this electrical center, if you may, is turning on and you're starting to be able to project the picture, what the brain and all the rest of the organs that are tied into it and the material framework that's tied into it does is start building these bridges. It literally looks like the non-Euclidean geometry of the 3D prints, the same way the mandible looks. It starts building that. And what it's doing is it's building an actual geometry that corresponds to what it is that you're trying to manifest. Okay? So what happens is you only can be doing one of two things. You can either be building more neurological pathways or bridges, which are themselves the construct in which you're going to be living in, or you could be atrophying, which is basically all your bridges are being destroyed. You're starting to actually even forget things, and then it's more of like a crumbling. So if we understand regeneration, what regeneration is, this is why, let's just use some simple examples. Some people, when they smoke weed, they start forgetting things. This happens because either one or two things is going to happen with this particular crystal. Either it's going to keep growing more neurological pathways that correspond to what the imagination is thinking. That's why some people become very creative. Or it's going to be breaking down and atrophying neurological pathways, basically collapsing bridges. And in those bridges are the person's memories. And if they do that enough, meaning that they somehow are not going in the other direction with it, then they start suffering from long, extensive memory loss. Okay? Because what's happening is you have what seems like an electrical circuit. The other day, some lightning struck outside of the window, but about a few, maybe a yardstick, two or three yardsticks away from the window. You can imagine how loud that sounds. Like that's like, it's a, for those of y'all who've been close to thunder. But I heard something before, and it was like a pop. It was the same pop like you put the plug in the socket. So, and it was not loud either. It was like, tick, and then boom, then the thunder came. So there was the tick first and then the thunder. Okay. So what I'm saying is that in your mind, then, when you're thinking, when the firing of the synapses, that's the tick. Then what happens is the thunder comes, boom. These are the neurological pathways, which actually look like thunder. And when those neurological pathways of light basically ricochet, they make their imprint, what you need to have then is the right elements that then build on top of that imprint. This is very important for you to understand, because if you're ever going to unlock regeneration, this is exactly how it would happen. When you hit a synapse, it creates a thunder. The thunder is light. This light, which looks like veins, is actually a geometric structure. So if you had the right kind of organism to then begin to immediately build around that light before it basically burns out, then you are literally at that point already starting the process of building them and manifesting the idea that you're having. Okay? So then it makes sense then that in order to be able to achieve regeneration, you would first have to do one thing was, and again, this is all in this process of this period of time, I got a message, and the message was from a general. It was in the end of his conversation, and he said, before you can ever expect to deal with the parasites out here, you need to first deal with the parasites inside. Okay? And what was very clear in this transmission was just that, don't forget though, that the body in many cases is overrun by parasites. And if you have this idea of one day leveling up like the Avatar and dealing with some of these external parasites, you would never be able to do that until you got the ones inside under control. Now, very specifically, because I'm not saying everybody has parasites. I know some of y'all eating really good and everything. We just need to make sure we cover everything here. I would just assume I had them and dealt with that, then not to assume that I have them and then them actually be there, because they do deal with your vibratory frequency and your vibratory wavelengths. Solutions. Again, I still haven't got into my build today. Where we at on time? Solutions. I posted a video on YouTube, and it shows how frequency vibrates and shatters parasites. Next step would be something like Spooky 2, and this is just outside the conversation today, but it's basically one of the highest grade frequency devices out right now. It beats the GB4000, and they have a massive database of frequencies, and they have several ways that frequencies could be applied to the body. Like, they went to the next level. So it's just word to the wise that there are solutions, and what I want us to begin to do is become solution driven, solution machines, if you may. That the moment an issue is addressed, real solution comes into play, but we only work with the top level stuff because I'm tired of asking folks questions about folks' significant others and their family members. We're dealing with, well, listen, my vibration, how do I fix that? And it's like, yo, this frequency right here, you may need to get the Fanatron tube, et cetera, et cetera. But real, how do I rebuild neurological pathways so that I can regenerate and I can actually make sure that I'm building through the bridges of my synapse? Okay? So that's this conversation. That's the first part of this today. From what I said, you can see that I'm serious enough about not stressing yourself out and not taking any of this stuff that I'm going to be talking about right now so heavy that it breaks you. But I also can't be in here holding your hands and never telling you anything, especially if I'm getting the knowledge that is explaining what happened here on Earth and why Earth is in this predicament.